Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have Bart and Mark from Capstone, and our guest trainer today is John Mayer from A2J Author and Cali. And so I will leave you with him.
Thanks, Claudia. Hey, Brittany, Devin. I hope it's Devin, not Devon. And Shada, if I mangle your names, I sincerely apologize. So I'm John Mayer, the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. We're the developers of A2J Author. If it's weird why a legal education nonprofit is doing court automation software, it's a long story that I'm not going to tell right now. But the short story is we do use this a lot in law schools. We do demos, we do trainings. Law schools have courses where their students do projects. I mean, when we started, the aspirational goal was that we would have hundreds or thousands of law students out there learning how to do document assembly, or we'd have dozens of projects every year where they would be automating forms. But reality is that law students are the worst people to automate court forms because they have no experience as lawyers. And so what you want is someone with subject matter expertise, SMEs, who already sort of get or understand the nuances of a particular automated project. So even something as simple as an expungement or a fee waiver or something, there's tricks of the trade, and those tricks of the trade are even unique or individual to jurisdictions, states, or if it's a county level sort of thing. And the legal aid attorneys are the ones who theoretically have been representing actual live people through these things. And then if you get them to contribute to the automation part, they can sometimes add things that are make or break, or that are great improvements on your automated document. That's true whether you're using A2J Author or Hot Docs or DocAssemble or anything like that. This is more part of the art part of the art and science of document automation. So we still train law students, though, because we want to introduce them to the fact that we think their future is going to involve a lot more practice automation than it has in the past. Wherever they end up, they could be both advocates for and smarter students for understanding the fact that a lot of the practice of law is a flow chart. It's an algorithm, and certainly the simple stuff should be automated so that they could be more effective or have more time to spend on the not so automatable stuff. So anyhow, if you're attending, and I see Andres show up, thanks. And if you're attending, you've hopefully already watched the first video on new author training. Jessica is our A2J Author project manager. She's out on maternity leave. Her and CJ are doing fine. I haven't spoke to her in a couple of weeks though, but I want you all to do me a favor. Is the next time you see her, tell her that I said that she named her kid A2J, just because she was the A2J project manager, and she'll get a good laugh out of hearing that I said that. All right. Actually, I did want to show you just one thing because it's relatively brand new in A2J Author, and it's kind of fun to play with too. And then we'll take any questions you got whatsoever. And Mark, I don't know if we've corralled somebody in to talk about their project, but we'll come back to that. So what are the
one. We have a volunteer.
Awesome. All right. We have a victim. Oh, awesome. I mean a volunteer. Good. So one of the new things in A2J Author, and this is something that I want. This is something that was actually pretty strong in the Flash version, A2J 4. But we kind of lost it when we went to JavaScript because it was a little bit harder to code. It was the map, or the mapper. So as I was saying before, it's a lot of these things are here. Let's zoom out. So here I did some work with the Iowa Legal Aid folks. This is a long time ago. I haven't opened this thing in a while. But as you can see, it's a giant sort of thing, and the mapper used to just leave you like this. And you could, spend a half hour, dragging these around to see if you can get them into the right order. It was almost like a bad Microsoft free game or something like that. But the new version of the mapper has a button that just sort of fixes that for you. And I'm going to press it. It's going to take a few seconds because this is actually a pretty big interview. Let's see how long this takes. If I press auto cleanup, it rebuilds the map. Oh, that was pretty fast.
Wow.
And I can zoom out. And as you can see, this is a pretty big interview with 6 steps. The steps are all color coordinated. Here, let's zoom in a little bit. The steps are color coordinated and stacked. You can see where there's a button that leads to a next page that, that's what that line means. And the especially cool thing is that you can pop this open and I can see all the pages that are within each step. And if I want to edit one of these, I can double click on that and edit the page, or I could just double click on the picture itself and then go in and edit it. And if I were to change a destination, I'm not going to do that here, but if I were to change the destination of one of the buttons, where is that? Way down here. There it is. The next button goes to 1C instruction 1. Let's see if that's true. Yes, that's 1C instruction 1 right there. Then it would actually redraw the lines and things like that. So I found this, and I can turn the links off. Whoops, it takes too long. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, this is all being done locally, so there's like there's a pause there. You can mess around a little bit with the drawing things. There's actually in the tool a lot of different ways to make colors and cool stuff, and we're slowly working our way through understanding them and adding them in as we see appropriate, to add value for the authors. But my vision for this is that people will build that this will come to replace the pages tab, which is useful, but it's kind of just a big wall of text, and it's broken in the sense that this is not the order in which the user goes through the interview, right? This is a one-dimensional page. It's just a list, and so there's no way to show two-dimensionality, so branching easily in this. But in a map, you can do that, right? You can have a line that goes from here, and another line that goes around that to something else, and so it's possible with a flowchart like interface to show that sort of stuff. And although it's not unnatural for lawyers to think in terms of flowcharts, if you're getting into document automation and you're thinking about conditional branching, like if they make more than this amount of money, then ask questions. If they live in this county, ask different questions. If they're female or Hispanic, or if some aspect of their personality, their personhood of their case or something requires you to skip questions or add more questions, you can sort of actually see that in the flowchart. And it's a way of mentally visualizing the steps that people are going to go through. And we hope that becomes a way to make sure that there's fewer mistakes in guided interviews, and that the development of them is faster, especially when you're dealing with gigantic interviews with lots of branching and stuff. Now there's a feature that we need to add. You notice there is branching here, but it's not visually represented. So maybe that's something to add to our feature list. Let me open up one more just to show you something less complicated. I'll choose like a really tiny one. So this is just a demo that I was doing a couple days ago. Choose map. And as you can see, for the trivial ones, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, and stuff like that. All right, that's the extent of my sort of blabbing on. If you have any questions that I can attempt to answer, Jessica was the super expert with everything on the tip of her fingertips. But I went and watched all the videos, so hopefully I can help you out if you've got any specific questions.
Thanks, John. This is Mark. Anybody have any questions or comments for John? I think the developments in A2J Author are just awesome. I mean, that mapper is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, so I do have a question. I'm sorry, I thought we were all muted. This is Shahada with Legal Services in Northern California. So, do you find when using, I guess, in the place that we're at now with kind of like the beginning of project development, that it's helpful to kind of think through the logic part of it, like at the beginning, or as you, yeah, I mean, to build that logic piece in as you're building now or later?
So before, and a matter of fact, I mean, one of the reasons why we wanted to build a better mapper is that when we worked with people building guided interviews from scratch, they would inevitably start with either a wall with post-its or a whiteboard with post-its and lines drawn saying if they answer this question and then go to this question, and each post-it represented a question screen. And then they would, once they had all of those, then they would sit and type all those questions into either directly into A2J Author, just quickly creating a new page for each one, which you can do in the mapper right now, by the way. Or they would type all the questions into a Word document before they got to A2J Author because they wanted to run it through an editor, someone else who would read it over with fresh eyes, looking for what's the word, plain language. That's the word I'm looking for. Before, so they wanted to do all their as much editing as possible in a word processor or a notepad, and then they would open up A2J Author and start doing a bunch of page creations, cutting and pasting, and things like that. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, so in California, as I'm sure in many states, there is this, cluster of bizarre and conflicting tenant protections right now related to COVID.
Oh
And
boy, yeah, I know.
yeah, and it's a mess. And so one thing that I just did for my program was I used a Google form, which it's like a 300 question Google form. It's
Oh my gosh.
ridiculous. Yeah, to say it's a mess. I mean, it's clean from an end user experience, but to try to go in and like change it is awful. But that's why I was kind of asking, like I built out these separate, like the CDC order and then our state law and then the local protections and, price gouging protections. And I did all of these like separate, laws or protections as these like individual interviews, and then wove the logic through after, and felt like that was really inefficient. And so just really,
So don't be, and Bart and Mark might disagree with me on this, but don't worry about efficiency too much, because the translation of complex rules and things like what you're doing, especially if you're the first one to do them, which you are in this situation because it's all brand new, is there is no efficient path. There's only sort of picking up the thread wherever you can and building until you say, wait, I got to pick up another thread. Now, there is a certain amount of how do you eat an elephant here, one bite at a time.
Right.
And so if you can break down the pieces into like, all right, first I'm going to have a whole step on the federal guidelines. I'm going to have a whole step on the CDC guidelines. I'm making stuff up here because I don't understand your problem space. I'm going to whole step on the state guidelines. And what you could do is then have a step before that says, I'm just going to ask you some questions, yes or no. Are you in federal housing? Yes, no. Are you in a rent-controlled room? Yes, no. Do you live in California? Yes, no. And what you can do is you can set variables, true, false, a whole bunch of them. And then the next step could be, if this variable is true, jump to the Fed ones and then ask them those questions. And if it's false, then it will just go to the next one and say, if the state variable is true, then go and ask them the state questions. And if it's false, then if the CDC guidelines variable is true, ask them those questions.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes like a bank teller line where everybody comes in the front, and then is quickly triaged to whichever, all or none, or all or one of their options.
So going back to that big map that you had for Iowa legal aid, where it had, like 5 or 6 steps, just trying to really like make this make sense. Would, excuse me, would each of those, 5 steps or 6 steps, whatever it is, it's a different logic strain. So that first row is like the true false that you were talking about. And then the second is, for example, the CDC. The third is the state. Is that how that mapper can be visualized?
That's how it could be visualized. That's not what they did in
Sure.
Iowa.
Sure.
But yeah, the first step could be like sort of a high level triage, setting variables to true,
Mhm.
false. And then all the and then the rest of the steps are all optional, so to speak. You either run them or you skip them based on the user's choice of yes, I am
Mhm.
that type of, yes, I am in federal housing. No, I'm not.
Right.
Whatever it is, whatever the choices are. I've worked with lots of different document automation tools, and nobody can make you very efficient here. What makes you efficient is your familiarity with the tool. So Bart or Mark could whip one of these things out in less time. I'm not going to say like in an hour, but in less time than someone new to it. And I can whip out an A2J guide in you pretty fast, but when you start getting into the details, you have to slow your brain down and say, all right, one step at a time, make this work. Chop the problem into small pieces, make the small piece work, test it, because you inevitably make mistakes. You have typos in the variable names. You have a button that goes someplace that I'm like, when did I do that? That was a mistake. And you have to you eventually get sick to death of testing a very long interview. But it's absolutely necessary to make sure that when you put it out there, it works for people.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else have a comment or question for John?
Hi, this is Brittany. I have a question.
Britt.
So I was looking at Michigan Legal Aid. They have a good A2J guided interview for evictions and the eviction moratorium. And I was wondering, is it possible to use something like that as a template for creating our own interviews for our states? Or does A2J have like a form library?
Oh my God, you just came up with like the counterexample to my wrong statement. So the best way to get efficient is to steal somebody else's work, or to borrow. So yes, if their template is up on LHI, then you can go into the developer portal, find it, and just grab it. That's why the developer portal on LHI was built the way it was, with the expectation that people would borrow from each other's work. And if you can't find it, or whatever, for whatever reason, maybe they're self-hosting, I'm not sure. just email Angela into a trip and say, you know, would it be okay if we steal or borrow your thing? Then you can, she'll send you the zip file, and then you can upload it to A2J Author and open it up and have your way with it. You know, one of the best ways is to go look at the all text tab. Sorry, go to one of the reports probably, and run the full report. Oh, this is going to take a few minutes. Oh, there we go. Wow, this is a fast computer. I have a brand new computer. I'm always amazed how fast it is. And this lets you give, you know, get a big overview of a guided interview, because it's all the text, all the notes, all the links, all in one place. Not, you know, so tabbing through. So this is a way to find out, like, oh, do they have a question on I don't know, diversity? Do they have a question on FHA? Do they have a question on Section 8 or whatever keywords you might be looking for to see how they handled it in their particular situation?
Yeah, and for all of you, if you look at the terms of use in the LHI for developers, we call them for contributing content. There is language there that says that when you upload to LHI, you will be agreeing to have your information up on the portal, and there's some do's and don'ts. It's pretty liberal because the whole point was to make this like a co-op where people can benefit and learn from each other's back-end work. If you decide you can download it from LHI, you get a zip file, you download it, then you can edit it and do your own changes, and then you can upload yours back up. I think it's just nice to let the other state, the owner, know that you've done that, because sometimes they're writing grants and if they've done something really amazing and it becomes like a seminal interview, then everybody copies the technique that they develop. It's great for them to know, because then they can say our interview has been replicated in 5 states or whatever, and they can use that, you know, to promote their own project to their funders or their executive director or whoever they need support from. But it's all set up so that you can do that. So just take a quick look at the terms of use as contributors. You know, it will say also that you're gonna keep your stuff in good shape, and that you're gonna react when we request that you fix an issue with a form. There's all kinds of things there. So just take a look to see what it is. I think they have served us well for a long time, and I think that's how, you know, if the CDC, I know that Illinois has the CDC eviction moratorium interview app, and Michigan has a CDC eviction moratorium app already. If you want to look at those and see if they work for you, go ahead and use them. You know, that's what the whole point of the portal.
And John is showing the portal as a coming attraction, but it really is powerful. As Claudia says, we have this ethic of a software commons on LHI. And with 5,000 plus modules in both A2J and Hot Docs format, you can see a lot. Hey, John, you want to click on the all interviews there at the top. Right now, you're just in the subset of the ones that are your organization. You get much more. There you go.
Now search for eviction. Oh, much better. Sorry. I thought I was in my.
In one item.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, we should keep going. The question Shahada asked about, you know, where do you start is a critical one. I thought, Bart, if you're willing to quickly opine on that topic, this would be a good time to do it. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think it depends is the short answer. You know, sometimes it pays just to dig in, and it depends on sort of where you're starting from, what information you have to start with. You know, and who you're working with as a subject matter expert. For example, if you have a subject matter expert who is not, you know, doesn't have a lot of time or isn't really into this stuff, you know, you may have to kind of get started and then go back and find out if they agree with what you did. And if they're really, you know, if they're really willing to dig in and provide you with the logic, then, you know, it's great to be able to start with that. We just have been working with a project where we're doing forms, family law forms for the state of Washington, and the subject matter expert, who's also becoming quite a good hot docs template developer as part of the process, produced this very detailed, incredibly detailed, color-coded spreadsheet for dealing with jurisdiction over children, where the rules are just incredibly complex. And it was really, really useful. I just took it and I literally converted it into a script from, which is probably about 50 lines long, right from the spreadsheet. So that's one instance where having material and planning the logic out beforehand was really useful, because it almost worked perfectly right out of the box. I mean, there was some tweaking involved, but a lot of it was just language and so forth. So, and then sometimes, you just have to kind of dig in and do it. There's really, you don't really know where you're going to end up.
So let me give a counter example to that. We were working on a project a couple of years ago, and they wanted to include, it was for filling out like 5 different forms. And the problem was the interactions between the forms was the subject matter expert, well, just to put it kindly, didn't have all the branches defined. So there was a lot of, there be dragons here, or I'm not sure what happens next, sort of stuff. And trying to build, and it was a gigantic interview, 400 questions or something. And so the way we tackled it, tossed it back at them and say, we're gonna break this up into 5 interviews, 1 for each form, and get one done at a time, and that greatly simplified the logic, and it greatly simplified the communication with the subject matter expert about the logic, because they could just say, well, I don't have to think about those. I only have to think about this aspect of it. And what I think actually finally happened was the 5 interviews got combined into one. They were each one a different step, a gigantic branch. But we couldn't have figured that out until we sort of took the problem apart, so that we could more effectively put it back together.
We'll be getting more deeply into project planning and management in the materials for week 5, but I think you've gotten a preview, as you have, of A2J. This is just a tease for A2J. You're going to have much more in-depth coverage in weeks 6 and 7. So I think we're going to move back to the other half of this week 3 work, which was hot docs and a quick look at the PDF template automation process. Let me see if, first of all, anybody else has any questions or comments before we move to that topic. So here we are on 10/7. This is the beginning of week 4, end of week 3. So all of you guys presumably have done the homework for week 3. Shahada is our volunteer presenter. Shahada, can I make you a presenter and ask you just to show us what you did and anything you ran into?
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. Okay, you have the floor.
Okay, so let me move this around. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So hard when you share a screen and not being able to see what you're sharing. So, so this was, I was glad to be able to do this, because this is a California form. So it is like the format is familiar to me, which made things, I was able to like store the information in my mind for future use. So that was helpful. And so, I mean, I went through the steps in the, like in the week information, in bringing it up. And I'm finding that, I don't remember which of you guys were mentioning, but just the repetition and getting more comfortable with the programs, helps in the efficiency of it. So I'm some of the hiccups that I'm having are very interesting to me, that they're struggles, but it seems to take me like a few separate tries to be able to upload the new template accurately into like the template folder, and I just find that bizarre that I end up having to like delete and redo it multiple times. So just flagging that has been a struggle for me. But so I found that like double clicking in, double clicking in boxes or in areas will create like a space, and I can, drag it and make it longer, bigger. When I was playing with the unlawful detainer form yesterday, I realized that I could make the boxes, like put them in alignment. And so I haven't done that with this form yet, but I think that will be a very helpful thing to do to make everything look nicer. And I also worked to kind of remember like these TE or DA, I don't remember what they're called, but like the taglines or component field. Yeah. Trying to remember those so that as I'm looking at a form, know exactly like what data it is that I'm asking for to go into a particular box. And as I'm saying this must be so like ridiculously simple for you guys who've done this for a long time, but it's just helpful to speak it out loud. And so looking at like the date of marriage and having looked ahead at like computation, I'm assuming that like that type of, putting in a date here and then putting in a date of separation, that the logic will then direct, or the form will direct to compute this years and months calculation. It's like the point of using the right. Okay. So that is, certainly a helpful thing in some forms. Anything where like age and birth date was my first thought, where you have to compute both. And I do a lot of probate guardianship work, so I'm very excited for that feature. So I did have a question about the petition 4, and I just wanted to make sure I understood when you like group boxes like we did here, that when we're selecting so to create a multiple choice variable petition like this, I will only be able to select, or not me, but the end user will only be able to select one of the 3 when you're grouping boxes and creating a multiple choice variable like this.
Quick answer there is that'll depend upon how the variable is defined as opposed to how the fields are defined on the form. So if you go to the variable, you can right click on that group, I think, and go and click on variable.
Mm-hmm.
And then go to the pencil, the editing pencil on the far right near the top.
Mm-hmm.
That's the 3 choices in the definition of this variable control what the user will answer. And then by grouping them on the form, you're basically saying, hey, check the corresponding box to whatever the user answered. So theoretically, you could have a discrepancy, right? You could have allowed 4 choices in the variable, which the user will see, but the form only had 3, and so that would be a bug. That would need to. Right? I don't know if that answered your question, Shahada, but that's
so right. So like in the interview, I guess what I'm asking is like in the interview itself, which I guess I can go look at again. I didn't make that leap there, but it should allow, because it's a multiple choice, it should allow in the interview for only one of these 3 to be selected.
Right. And if you look at the second box from the bottom, it's one only is the default setting for a multiple choice.
Perfect. That's what I think that's what I was asking for. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. It's those things that I'm only like, I'm still looking at the boxes that are things that I'm being directed to look at. So thank you. That was helpful.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so we can look at, so I, set the interview, the default interview. So question here, using, like, if I were to select use a custom interview, is this where like the crossover between A2J and Hot Docs is?
Not directly, but that's a good segue. The week 4 materials get into how to create interviews in Hot Docs that have that kind of logical structure John was showing very graphically.
Okay.
So you can have an interview both in Hot Docs and then have an A2J guided interview that is paired with it that can be presented to a user. So you've got lots of alternatives, but yeah, one basic decision is: do you want your end user to experience this form through an A2J style interface or through a Hot Docs style interface? And maybe that's different for different users, right? Advocates may be more comfortable in a Hot Docs style interview, whereas unrepresented litigants would prefer A2J.
Right. Okay.
They're both delivering the same payload of answers to questions that then get used by Hot Docs to process this form at the end of the.
Right. No, definitely. And I could see certainly that, yes, that split of advocates using something like a Hot Docs, that would be just more, in my mind, it would be like easier to just go through fields than the A2J interview, but definitely building the A2J interview for, improper litigants is really, I'm excited to do that. Okay, so then to test the assembly that I did, it was very simple. So, yeah, that's what it ends up looking like. And I mean, I felt confident at building this one out. It was simple, but again, it was good to do it in the PDF in the court forms.
Cool. And as you may know, this very form is fully automated on LHI many times in modules created by the Judicial Council. So as John was showing, if and when you have your contributor account, you can go to the portal and grab a copy and explore it in all its grandeur.
Awesome.
The same is true, by the way, for the unlawful detainer forms in California. They've been automated. I did ones for Los Angeles Superior Court, and there's a statewide one that Deanna Glick at the Judicial Council has built. And they've chosen for the moment to have everything done with the Hot Docs interface, but you can imagine for some contexts, the A2J one would be much more convivial for certain users.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's what my plan is to convert that Hot Docs interview into a far more like client-friendly interface, to where it's not so many just words and more engaging. So, yeah, so that's the plan, but awesome. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Shahada. Let me take it back for a second, see if anybody else has any questions while I'm doing so. Again, we're finishing week 3. I always get confused on these, and beginning week 4. Now that we're back into some pretty heavy-duty Hot Docs stuff for another week, which is getting into how you create these custom interviews in Hot Docs, and even more thornily, how you deal with repeats, where you're dealing with lots of collections of complicated information that's repetitive, like for many children or many causes of action or many properties. So that's the preview of coming attractions. I wanted to show you one quick thing to jump back to a topic, which is this whole, again, this will come up more later in week 5 and in week 6 and 7, but how do you decide when A2J makes more sense or Hot Docs makes more sense? And like many design decisions we face, it's really a balancing test. Question of overall ease of use. how much better is A2J or hot docs for a specific audience. Ease of navigation is certainly a factor. Can you include audio and video? How well can you handle repeating data, especially nested repeats, which get very, very hairy? What's the overall computational power? And how hard is it to author and maintain it? So those are all the kind of things you need to balance when you're making that decision. And depending upon how they come out and how important you find these different factors, you will have different outcomes. Let me see if there's any other questions about week 3 that we've finished and week 4 that's coming up. I do need to get, if possible, I see there's a flashing light in the question pane, unless that's a chat from somebody. That's Claudia telling us that Michigan has one, what? An unlawful detainer, Claudia? I'm not sure what you're referring to there.
It's the CDC form, in case people want to contrast to the one I shared from Illinois.
Okay.
So Illinois has one and Michigan has one, and you can see how they've customized them for their, because they're playing in the context of eviction. So you can see how what makes them different.
Okay. Thank you very much. And there's a lot of them spreading around in different platforms, and quite a choice. I wanted, before I forget, I did want to see if we can get a volunteer. I think most of you guys have already been on the spot once before, so repeats are not a problem. Andres, are you willing to do this next week, or Brittany or Devin? Any of you guys particularly willing to be a presenter next week?
Yeah, this is Brittany. I can do it.
Okay, we have at least Brittany. If anybody else, when spirit moves you, when we get to next week, feel free to jump in, but we always welcome questions and comments. Let's see, what else we have? Bart or John or Claudia, anything else we want to mention? I should mention, as I think you know, there are monthly community calls for the LHI developer world. And the one we're doing this month on the 27th, Tuesday the 27th, one of the topics is going to be how to interact with some of the complexities of hot docs and Word, or A2J in Word for that matter, and how do you implement checkboxes is a common issue, and how do you deal with multiple sections and headers and footers when the resulting document is being generated with document assembly logic. So I'd encourage you to join that call, if nothing else, just to get a feeling of how these calls work. They're free and they're recorded and they're often a lot of fun. But back to Claudia, John, Bart, anybody want to say anything, or any of our trainees? You guys have any more questions or comments?
I'm good. We've been working on the complexity issue for years. It's gotten better. It's gotten a lot better. But I kind of feel like we're still climbing a mountain here. We haven't reached a plateau of perfection where we can make an authoring interface that's so easy that you can take right from your subject matter expertise brain and dump the flowchart into the tool. There's been an explosion of no code, what they call no code tools, and even some of the old players, Neota and others, have started to rebrand themselves as no code tools. And there's been an explosion of new interface design ideas there, and I'm looking forward to the future when we can steal ideas from them and bring them into the access to justice space.
Yeah, so I'll be sending the webinar link for the call on the 27th, which is the one that Mark was talking about. And there's a lot of calls that we have recorded that you can go and view that have really helpful technical pieces. So what if we're not covering here, or if you want to go and review a specific technique, it could be that we already have the recording. So all of that is in in the developer support area. In December, talking about this issue of how do we take expert knowledge and convert it into software, trying to find that perfect technique or the perfect approach. We're hoping that in December we do a national webinar, which is in addition to the monthly call. And in that one, we're hoping to be talking with different groups that are doing similar work to us. Mark, do you want to share a little bit about who we've reached out to see if we can talk about how do we take expert knowledge and then create software out of that?
Yeah, there, as John said, we have a number of competing and collaborating platforms for doing this work. And so we're going to try to enlist a couple, a representative from Neota Logic, and maybe somebody who's going to present from the community lawyer or doc assembly world. And John, perhaps you or Jessica from the A2J world, because we all face this common challenge of how the heck do you cram this expertise and organize it and make it actually behave magically through software, which is our collective challenge that we're never going to reach perfection on. So I think we're good for today. Again, last call for questions or comments. I hope this is going well for you. We have some other folks who are involved in doing the training but are not regularly on these calls. But as you can see, week 4 it gets tricky again. So give yourself a few extra hours to get this stuff done and have fun. It's incredibly powerful and satisfying once you kind of grok it. But it may be a little disorienting as you're doing it.
Okay.
Just checking.
Thank you.
Oh, wait,
Thank
Andres is also willing to share next week, so I'm going to put his name down too. We'll have a double header. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye.